In this section, we're going to talk about quartiles and box plots. The sample minimum is the smallest value in your data set. The sample maximum is the largest value in your data set. And the range is what you get when you take the maximum data value minus the minimum data value. Now, it's tempting to use the range as your measurement of spread. However, it doesn't really give us a well-rounded look at the data. Because what if one or both, the minimum and the maximum value, happens to be an outlier? Then you may get a false impression of your data. Okay? So if you've got one crazy large or one crazy small value and you use that in your calculation of the range, that really doesn't tell you what's going on with the bulk of your data, right? Because an outlier could be a mistake. So instead, we would like to shift and look at quartiles. Quartiles divide your ordered data into 4 quarters. So I'm going to draw a little image here as we describe this. So if this is all of my data, this would be my minimum data point and this would be my maximum data point. So notice if you just talk about those two values, it doesn't really give you any good idea of what's going on in the center there. The first quartile, Q1, has roughly 25% of your observations. It's the same thing as what we call the 25th percentile. It's the middle of the lower half of your data. The second quartile has roughly 50% of your observations. It's also called the median. So we already know what the median is. The median is the center value. So that makes sense. That's also our second quartile. It's where 50% of the data lies below it and 50% of the data lies above it. It cuts your data in half. And the third quartile has roughly 75% of your observations. It's the same thing as the 75th percentile. It is the middle of the upper half of your data. So what we get is an image that looks like this. So we have the median right in the middle, that's Q2. Then we have the middle of this lower half is called Q1, and the middle of this upper half is called Q3. And every one of these quartiles basically holds 25% of the data. The 5-number summary is a summary of information that includes your sample minimum, Q1, the median, Q3, and the sample maximum. So all of these values that we've got labeled on this little diagram here. And then we have what's called the IQR. That is roughly how much space the middle 50% of your data occupies. It's the measure of spread for a skewed data set. And to calculate it, you take Q3 minus Q1. So the IQR is basically right here. It's that middle 50% of your data. And if you know where Q3 and Q1 are located, you can just subtract those to figure out where that is. So we have a set here of data, and we want to find Q1, the median, Q3, and the IQR, and the range for the following data. We've got a group of 8 children, and their heights are given in inches. A histogram and a dot plot are also shown, and it says, note that the distribution is indeed right skewed. There's like a peak, and then this would form a tail off to the right. Okay, we've talked about finding the median before. To find the median, we find the very center value here, but since we have 8 values, there is no center. The median ends up falling between the 2 values that are in the center. And if I look at that 53.5 and 54, what's directly in the center there, I could average those out with a formula if I want, or I could probably on this one just think, oh, 53.75 is right in the center there. So that is the median. Now Q1 cuts that lower, so here's my median. Q1 cuts this lower area in half, so it's going to be located directly in the center of this lower value, which again, we happen to have an even amount of values down here. So it's going to be directly in the middle of these two center values. Sorry, that's Q1. So I might actually need to calculate that. What's directly in the middle of 48 and 53? So if you add that together and then divide by 2, you should get 50.5. That'll be Q1 in this case. Q3 divides that upper half in half again, so it's going to be right in the center of 60 and 62. In this case, I don't need a formula to figure out what's right in the center there. That's 61. What is the IQR? As long as you went through and found Q1 and Q3 already, the IQR is very easy to find. You just take Q3 minus Q1. So in this case, that's 61 minus 50.5, which is 10.5. And the range is the maximum minus the minimum. So that would be, in this case, 71 minus 48, which is 23. If we want to give our 5-number summary, we simply give what is the minimum. So the minimum is 48. Q1 is 50.5. The median is 53.75. Q3 is 61, and the max is 71. And you always want to get those in order. Okay, so let's take just a little bit of a look at what this actually does on this dot plot. So I'm going to mark off where is Q1 and Q3. So Q1 is at 50.5, so that would be approximately here. And Q3 is at 61, so maybe here. So the IQR is right here. So notice what happens here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 data values inside that IQR, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 data values outside of that IQR. So this IQR does in fact hold the middle 50% of the data. Right, and then the other 50% is on the outside there. And this idea of kind of sketching where that IQR is going to lead us into another way to, another graphical way to visualize data.